Okay, so now we have to talk about surface. I'm going to get rid of this box and add mesh plane. So this surface right here is facing in one direction. If we hit tab on the keyboard and then hit N on the keyboard and go into face normals and then choose to display a larger face normal, you can see this blue line appear. This is the direction at which the face is facing. We can also turn on this, and I keep this on all the time, try to anyway. It's called back face culling. If I was to flip this around, I would see that the face is not visible on one side, and it is visible on this side. Therefore, it's dictating that this is my frontal face, and this is my back face. Now, important, this will never show up in a 3D print because it is a single surface, not a volume. Okay, so a volume is this. This cube is a volume. And if I went to components, I could see that the face normals are all facing out. So this would show up. Now if I went to hit R on the keyboard and then scaled this past a certain point, the face normals will face in, and this will not print. The same thing goes to here. If I went to go into the face, click on it, and hit Control E, I could extrude it. Now when I extruded it, I could extrude it this way or this way. But at least with backface culling, I can tell the difference between the two. Now in some cases you can fix this by hitting tab and then L, and then go in here and I could say maybe flip direction. And that will flip them out, and now it's legit. But let's say I had 2 or 3 of these that were flipped inside and some outside. This is it's totally not legit. These will error out every time, anytime I have a mesh that has surfaces that are pointing in multiple different directions. You can fix this by going sometimes into L on the keyboard to highlight it, all the components at once, and hit recalculate. In most cases it'll fix it, but let's say it's past redemption. Let's say I had something a little bit more complex like a UV sphere. And I went randomly in and said, well, you know, these faces right here, they're going to be flipped. And let's say the whole entire top shell is flipped. And these are flipped. At some point it fails. So I can hit recalculate. It worked out well. But if it was past 50% of the actual outside surface, it will not recalculate. So 50% of the surface would be something like this. Now that's past 50%. So in this case, if I hit L, it should have some errors. See? And this piece would be almost impossible to fix because I would have to generally go in and highlight each one of these that need to be repaired and then flip them. Or at least 50% of them. Like that. Okay, and that's stuff that's not in the Blender books. Alright. Now, another thing that you can't do surface-wise is this. Let me get rid of everything. Add mesh plane. Anytime I have a face, and if I go into the component, let's say this vertice, and then I pull it past the surface like this, this is a non-maluniformed geometry, okay, or a non-maluniformed face. And what happens is it has an error every time. Some programs can fix it, but generally stay away from doing it. So a volume cannot print. This one has an error. Many surface normals that are facing in different directions have errors. If you want something thin, here's another tip. So this will never print because it's not a volume. But if you wanted something that prints, that's thin, you can hit N on the keyboard and go in and dictate the size. These are in millimeters, and if I put 0.3 here, that's really thin. Now it doesn't look thin here, but this is 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters by 0.3 millimeters. So that's really freaking thin right there. And later on we'll get into nozzle sizes compared to layer height, but that's a little much to digest right now. Just know thin stuff, make it thin here. Alright, so hopefully that's everything that you should not do. Non-malformed geometry, bad. Surface direction, multiple different directions, bad. Thin does not print if it's not a volume. Volume, not a volume. Alright, that's everything component-wise. Let's look at everything object-wise.